Hey everybody, I'm going to show you the easy way to do an oil change on the Jeep Cherokee. And this method will apply to many other vehicles as well. And by doing it this way, you don't get dirty, you don't have to crawl under the car. It is so quick and simple and easy, and it makes doing the oil change pretty simple and painless. Now, typically what we would do is get underneath the vehicle, pull the drain plug, and drain out the old oil. But instead of doing that, I'm going to pull the oil off of the top side of the engine with this vacuum pump. So I'm going to pull a vacuum and suck the oil out of the top of the engine through the dipstick tube. And that way I don't have to crawl under the car and get all dirty. Now, this method works fine with this engine, and it works fine with the other vehicles that we have. The first time I try this method on a new vehicle, I will pull all the oil out of the engine that I can, and then I will go underneath the vehicle and pull the drain plug to make sure that there isn't any residual oil in the engine. If I get a bunch of oil draining out of the engine after vacuuming out all that I can, well, that tells me that that engine doesn't allow me to get the vacuum tube all the way to the bottom of the engine and get all the oil. And in that case, I'm just going to have to drain it the old-fashioned way with the drain plug. But on the engines that we have, and most vehicle engines, you can get all of the oil out of the engine by sucking it up through the top. And by doing that, it makes the job a whole lot easier. So what I do is make sure that the engine is warm but not hot, because the oil is going to flow a whole lot more easily once the engine is warm. So let's pull the oil out of this thing. We'll start off by removing the cover that's on the engine. And I'll pull you up a little bit closer here so you can see more clearly. So we're just going to locate the oil dipstick right here and pull that out and set him aside. And then insert the tubing from the oil vacuum pump and fish that all the way down to the bottom of the engine. And then we'll pump out the oil. We'll just pump up a vacuum, and we see the oil coming through the tube into the reservoir. And I just pump this a handful of times to build up a nice vacuum and let the pump do its business. I'll come revisit this in about 10 minutes or so and maybe give it a few more pumps to make sure that we get all the oil. So while we're sucking the oil out of the engine, we'll change the oil filter. And fortunately on the Jeep, the oil filter is right on the top of the engine, so that's really convenient. So we have a new filter here that I'll drop in place. To remove the old one, I have a socket that fits the top of the cover, and we just need to remove the cover. This should not be held on with incredible amounts of force, just snugly in place. And we unscrew the cover. And I'll let that drain oil for a moment. And we will remove the old oil filter element, which is right here. So we'll just remove that and discard the old element. So we take out the new element, like so. And this has a set of fingers on one end of it, and these fingers attach it to the cap. But before I put it into the cap, there is a gasket around the top here which we'll replace. So we'll just take this old one off. And we discard that old gasket. And with the filter, they provide a fresh gasket. So we'll just put that on, like so. Attach the filter to the cap. Drop that back in place. We will retighten the cap just enough so it doesn't leak oil. It doesn't need to be incredibly tight. It's plastic. We don't want to break anything. Just make sure that's snug, and we've replaced the filter. Well, it's just been a few minutes, and you can see that the vacuum pump is now full of oil. This holds about 5 quarts, so that's probably almost all of the engine oil. So I'm going to dump this out and then put the vacuum back into the engine, suck a little more, and make sure that we get all of the oil out of the engine. So I've just got an empty jug here to put the waste oil into, and we will dump this out so we can continue our adventure. There's a pressure release button, which will make sure there's no vacuum happening. I can then remove the tube off the vacuum pump and just set him down here for a moment. Pour out the waste oil. Reattach our vacuum tube. Take that away. And continue pulling oil out of the vehicle. It sounds like that's about all the oil. Now I'll move this tube around a little bit. Until I can't get any more oil out of the engine. Looks like that's about it. I'll suck this for a while just to make sure I pull all of the oil through the tubing into the reservoir, just to keep things clean without dribbling oil too much everywhere. Okay, then we can remove the suction tube out of the dipstick hole. Replace the dipstick. And put fresh oil into the vehicle. So our oil fill is right here. Remove the cap, set that aside. And we need to pour in about 6 quarts of oil. Oil filter, oil fill cap is on. Everything looks good. Put the cover back on. It just rests there on top of some rubber grommets to hold it in place. And that's in place, and that completes the oil change. So that concludes the oil change, but there's one more thing, and that is I want to reset the dashboard indicator in the Jeep Cherokee saying that an oil change is due. And that's really simple in this vehicle. All we need to do is to turn the vehicle on to accessory mode, like so. We don't have to start the engine. And once the vehicle is up in accessory mode, we depress the accelerator pedal 3 times completely to the floor within 10 seconds. 1, 2, and 3. And then shut the vehicle off. And that's it. And that will clear that error message saying oil change is due. The other thing I like to do is to reset one of the trip odometers so that I can keep track of how many miles are on this oil change. So if you have a Jeep Cherokee, I hope those instructions were helpful to you. If you have a different kind of vehicle, chances are you can probably do a top oil change on it as well and make your oil changes a little easier and less messy. I'll put links down below to all the tools that I used for this job if you're interested in pursuing those. If you found the video helpful, well, I appreciate that, and I would appreciate if you would let me know by clicking a thumbs up. If you really enjoy the content, you can always throw down a super thanks, and that's super appreciated. And if you find value in the channel, please consider subscribing. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I'll catch you soon on another upcoming video.